Yeah. I'm gonna have to learn that one.
Welcome, everyone, to Temple Ahavat Shalom, and Shabbat Shalom to all of you, as well as to all of you who are watching from back home. It's wonderful and a blessing to have you with us as we celebrate Shabbat. I'm Rabbi Matt Berger. I'm joined on the bima with our cantorial soloist, Allison Rosoff, and down at the piano, our accompanist, Joy Katzen-Guthrie. And it's a very special evening this Shabbat as we celebrate with Talia Murtha and her entire family, Kurt and Lara, Lydia and Liam, and the extended family. It's great to have all of you here with us as we celebrate, as Talia becomes a bat mitzvah. And later on in the service, I'll be calling her up to help us lead some of the prayers. In the meanwhile, if you look at the screen before you or follow along in the prayer book called Mishkan Tefillah, which is in the seat back in front of you. Dwelling place of prayer, turning to page 14. You'll find some of the Kabbalat Shabbat psalms. And specifically, we'll be singing Or Zarua Lat Sadiq, that light is sown for the Sadiq, for the righteous, radiance for the upright. The arrangement written by Rick Recht. Hope you enjoy. Or Zarua Lat Sadiku Ish Relev Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiku Ish Relev Simcha. Simechu Sadikim B'Adonai, B'Adonai, V'chodu L'zecher Kodsho, Zecher Kodsho. Or Zarua Lat Sadiku Ish Relev Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Sadiku Ish Relev Simcha. Continue now with Debbie Friedman's Light These Lights.
Oh, hear my prayer I sing to you.
pleasure now to call forward the women of the Murtha family who will be helping us light the candles. You'll find the blessing on the screen and also on page 2 of your prayer books. There's no, you just go, okay. And they'll go on.
Which one we? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Wonderful. We bless you, Adonai, our God, sovereign Spirit of the world, who commands us to light the twin candles of Shabbat, that we keep and remember this holy and special day. Thank you so much. This time I'd like to share a prayer for peace, not only as we've been doing in Ukraine, but also for our nation as well. Holy One, source of strength and life, our hearts are truly heavy this week with the news of yet another tragic school shooting of innocent children and adults. This being, of course, on the heels of other horrific acts of violence against African Americans in a grocery store and Asian Americans in a church. This is a time for prayer. Just as we've been praying for shalom, peace, regarding the war in Ukraine, so too we now need to ask for peace in our land. We yearn for the comfort and belief that everything will be all right, even in the face of insurmountable odds. Until that time, help us to reach God out to those in need. Bless our leaders with the ability to work together for the common good and the wisdom to make sound decisions when it truly counts. Bless all those with the courage and strength to work toward a world based on peace and goodwill. And let us remember the prophet Micah's vision of a time when everyone will be able to sit under their vines and fig trees, and no one shall make us afraid. Baruch atah Adonai, Holy One, shelter us, shield us, and show us the path to shalom, the path to peace. As we say together, Amen. One of the traditional songs to welcome Shabbat is Shalom Aleichem, peace be to you, Melachim, messengers of the Most High. If you turn to page 24, you'll find these words. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moachem Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Let's continue now with the words of the half or Chatzi Kaddish found on 26.
Yitgada v'yitgada shmei Rabba.
Amen.
B'yama divrach yurtei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayei v'yomechon uv'chayei de kol beit Yisrael. Bagala uv'izman kariv v'yimaru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach lehalam lameyamaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata tamira be'ama v'yimaru amen.
Let's rise now for the call to prayer, the words of the Baruch Hu on page 28.
Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Lai lai lai.
Please join me in a prayer for the evening called Ma'ariv Aravim on the top of 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. And in the middle of 33, we'll find words of love, Ahavat Olam. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We'll sing Open Up Our Eyes.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy
joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one.
Open up our eyes. Teach us how to live.
Teach us how to live.
Fill our hearts with joy
and all the love you have to give.
Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one, and we will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivot Malachuto Le'olam Va'ed.
Feel free to be seated. We'll continue on page 36, chanting the first and some of the third paragraph of the Shema. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta abam v'shiftecha b'veitecha uv'lechnecha v'derech u'shokbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot ayadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'ot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. On 39, we'll find a reading for freedom. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we are taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land. The winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. There is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. You'll find on the next page, Mi Chamocha, who is like you.
Yosei, Yosei, Micha, Mocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Micha, Mocha, Nedar B'Kodesh.
Please join me in the closing words of the blessing. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. On page 42, you'll find a prayer of protection and shelter called the Hashkivenu. Grant, O God, that we may lie down in peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom. Ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Uvros aleinu sukat shlomecha, uvros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us between thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen.
Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haparei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. So I promised you before that our Bat Mitzvah Talia will be coming up to lead us in some of the prayers. And Talia, this is your time because you're going to be leading us in the first few brachot, or prayers of the tefillah, our standing prayers, which begin on page 46 and continue on even pages. So I'll invite all of us to rise at this time while Talia leads us in prayer.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula, Livnei V'neihem, L'man Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer, U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל, אתה רב להושיע, מוריד התהל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעלוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Feel free to be seated. Let's all say Yasher Koach to Talia, beautifully leading us in prayer. We'll continue now with the intermediate blessings of the tefillah, the first of which can be found on 55 for the holiness of Shabbat, our day of rest, Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat, and a prayer on 56 that God's presence will always be with us, whether in Israel or anywhere else in the world. Baruch Atah Adonai HaMachazir Shechinato Litzion. And our prayer of gratitude and thanks, called Hoda'ah, is found on 59. Baruch Atah Adonai Hatov Shimcha Uchana'eh Lechodot. And the tefillah always ends with a bracha, or blessing for shalom, for peace. Grant abundant peace to Israel, your people forever, for you're the sovereign God of all peace. May it be pleasing to you to bless your people, Israel, and the world in every season and moment with your peace. Blessed are you, God, who blesses your people, Israel, and the world with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hambarech et amo Yisrael, ba'shalom. Take some moments for our own reflection and personal prayers while we listen to the words of Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom aleinu.
This time we'll turn our thoughts to healing, the hope and prayer that those who are ill will receive a refuah shlema, a full and complete healing of body, mind, and spirit. On the screen before you, and also in the middle of page 253, you'll find our prayer for healing, Misha Berach, God the one who blesses. We, of course, at this time, think of all those who are injured, not only from the war in Ukraine, but from the various tragedies of gun violence in this country, along with the following individuals. As we think of Laura Barnett, George Barnett, Yonatan Reuven Ben Rivka, Charlie Burke, Babs Brown, Manuel Cruz, Eddie Deerfield, Evelyn Edelman, Rob Edelman, Corrine Fairfield, Judith Fairfield, Joan Felser, Brad Fischelo, Harry Fleisch, Denise Freifeld, Mitchell Freifeld, Leah Gottlieb, Nick Martin, Arnold Miller, Melissa Miller, William Miller, Rita Pizer, Michael Ranzino, Rabbi Avram Reifer, Abby Richmond, Stephanie Ross, Dennis Schulman, Sarah Shagrin, Arlene Charlotte, Jeff Stark, John Walsh, and Sharon Worster. And if there are other names that you'd like to add, either aloud or privately in your hearts, feel free to do so at this time.
Sit down. My father, George Stark. Mi shebeirach avotenu mikor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Every single morning, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of Jews around the world put on tefillin. Some people call them phylacteries, which is just a fancy name for the pair of small leather boxes that contain 4 Hebrew texts from the Torah written on either vellum or parchment. They're worn by men and women, age 13 and up, during morning prayers as a reminder to observe the mitzvot, or sacred obligations, of Jewish tradition. Growing up as a Reformed Jew, I'll freely admit that I never even saw a pair of tefillin until after I graduated from college. But since then, I've learned quite a bit about them. For instance, when Jews put on tefillin, there's a precise order to it. The box used on the arm, which will go on your dominant arm, so for me, the left, or for somebody else, if they're righty, on the right, is called tefillin shel yad, which means the tefillin box that goes on your yad or your arm. That one's always fastened first. Then the leather straps are wrapped around the arm pretty tightly, which actually form the Hebrew letter shin on the hand of the wearer. After that, the box for the head, called tefillin shel rosh, the tefillin box for your head, your rosh, is then put on. This one simply rests on your head, and the leather straps hang down your back. There's no secret for the order in which they're put on, because a verse in the book of Deuteronomy clearly states, "You shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes," thus the order. There is, however, an important lesson that can be gleaned from the tefillin themselves, and it has to do with the length of the leather straps in the box that's worn upon the head. And you'll see the long leather straps there on the picture. In every set of tefillin, the right strap for the box that goes on your head is always longer than the left strap. So why would there be a difference in the length of the two straps? Surely it would make more sense and it'd be more logical if the left and the right strap were of equal length. As it turns out, there are many hundreds of laws that regulate the creation and use of tefillin, but not a single reason is given for the difference in the strap length. Of course, over the centuries, many people have come up with plausible explanations for the difference. But here's the one that I like best, which actually comes from Jewish mystical tradition. The lesson is about compromise. For just as the right strap is longer than the left, we're taught, so too the value of chesed, the Hebrew word that means love and kindness, should take precedence over din, the Hebrew word meaning strict judgment. In other words, when you have a lack of compromise, strict judgment. Now more than ever, it seems that there's far too little compromise in this world. Compromise, I looked it up, according to Merriam-Webster, means an agreement or a settlement of a dispute that's reached by each side making concessions. When people compromise, each side has to give in just a little bit, or maybe a lot, to achieve a goal. And in doing so, they choose to place peace over and above their necessity and need to be right, no matter the cost. Another way of thinking about compromise is choosing grace and decency over stern judgment. Consider the following rabbinic commentary regarding Moses, the leader of the Israelites, and his brother Aaron, the first high priest in the system of biblical Judaism. Regarding Moses, the commentary says, "It's said that only men wept for him, whereas for Aaron, both women and men wept for him." So they ask why. Because Aaron pursued peace, loved peace, and always placed peace before others during a quarrel. Moses, by almost any standard, is considered to be the archetypal leader. Countless religious groups longing for freedom and causes that champion social justice around the world have used Moses as the example par excellence when it comes to inspired leadership. Yet, in this commentary, we learn that only men wept for him. Perhaps it had something to do with his style of leadership. A rabbi named Shmuley Yankovitz writes, "If Moses shows love by being strict and tough in his demeanor toward his flock, then Aaron is a transformative leader who doesn't lead from a distance, but rather walks among the people, building and healing fractured relationships. It's a dialectical tussle between love and justice, where love always wins." Just think of what could be achieved with a little bit of compromise. Recently, all of us have been shocked and saddened by the violence that continues to plague our world. From the seemingly endless war of attrition being waged in Ukraine to many tragic events taking place much closer to home, where Black, Asian, and Latino communities have all been targeted and faced mass shootings these past 2 weeks. In the face of such violence and hatred, thankfully there's been a tremendous outpouring of support. We've seen very moving images of memorials and people leaning on one another. We've learned about acts of heroism that have saved lives. Of course, many, many prayers have been shared for strength, courage, healing, and solidarity. But perhaps what we need more than anything is a willingness to compromise. There's a powerful teaching that addresses this issue in the Talmud, one of the earlier codes of Jewish law. In the Talmud, in a section called Sanhedrin, we read, it's a mitzvah or sacred obligation to seek compromise. As it is written, truth and peaceful judgment should you judge in your gates. It would seem that where there is judgment, there is no peace. And where there is peace, there is no judgment. And what is the judgment that incorporates peace? It's compromise. Simply put, it's just not enough to throw up our hands and say, it'll always be this way and nothing will ever change. Even in Washington, D.C., change is possible. Here are but a few examples. After many years of challenging, dangerous, and sacred work by leaders and allies of the civil rights movement, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was enacted. When our Social Security system was close to running a deficit in the early 1980s, Democrats and Republicans came together to turn bipartisan suggestions into enacted legislation. And in 1990, inspired by the civil rights movement, disability advocates fought for federal protections for those who were affected. Even after the Americans with Disabilities Act was written, there were critics who claimed that these protections and accommodations weren't necessary. Thankfully, Congress set these critiques aside and moved ahead, with politicians working across the aisle to pass this landmark piece of legislation. Compromise is possible, and it begins with us. We need to focus on a world that is filled with far more chesed, love and kindness, than din, strict judgment. Having a willingness to yield for the sake of compromise and peace is so important and so valuable. Moreover, it speaks to our capacity for compassion and upholding human dignity. Since the beginning of 2022, there have been 252 mass shootings, far more than any other developed nation in this world. It's certainly not a record to be proud of. I, for one, would love to live in a world where our children feel safe in public and private schools, where people feel safe going to the grocery store, and where worshipers are able to gather in houses of prayer without fear or looking over their shoulders. I'm sure many, if not all of you, wish the same. Compromise is possible even in D.C. It's been done before, and it can be achieved again, even with a hot-button issue such as gun violence prevention. So if you're so inclined, please make sure that your voice is heard, and urge your senators and representatives in government to pass common sense legislation that values the dignity of human life and helps to protect every inhabitant of this precious land. Even professional sports teams have been using their social media to draw attention to this issue. Just yesterday, the Tampa Bay Rays and New York Yankees in baseball used their channels to offer facts about the influence and impacts of gun violence in lieu of game coverage. Now, as a native New Englander and Boston Red Sox fan, I'm usually quite reticent to speak about the Yankees in positive terms, But tonight, I'll brush that aside for the sake of greater good, of peace and compromise. The concluding words of the team's social media announcement yesterday wisely noted, no single organization, politician, or citizen can solve this crisis alone, but working together, we can make an impact. Jewish tradition wholeheartedly agrees. Indeed, in the very same section of the Talmud that I referenced earlier, we find another teaching. One who takes a single life, it is as if they have destroyed the entire world, while one who saves even a single life, it is as though they have saved the entire world. While there may not be a plethora of Reform Jews who wrap tefillin on a regular basis, I certainly hope that we can take the lesson of the different lengths of straps to heart. Namely, that we should strive to favor love and kindness over stern judgment, because many times success in life is all about finding compromise and pursuing peace. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue our journey from Passover, the Festival of Freedom, to Shavuot, which will occur in just about a week. Shavuot is the festival that's associated with receiving Torah at Mount Sinai. And we count the 49 days in between, which is called the period of the Omer. Back in biblical times, the Omer was a unit of measurement, and it was a small collection of barley that people would give to the priest to be offered on behalf of the people. Many times the food was eaten by the priests as well as the Israelites. You can follow along with the meditation on the screen. It's also on page 278 if you're in your prayer books. And feel free to join me in the Hebrew and the English. Hineni muchan umzuman lekayem mitzvat aseh shel sfirat ha'omer, which means I'm ready to fulfill the mitzvah or sacred obligation of counting the Omer. And here's the blessing. There you go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Our praise to you, Adonai, sovereign of all, who hallows us with sacred obligations, mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer, and I'll fill in the gaps here. Today is the 42nd day, which is 6 weeks of the Omer. In Hebrew, you would say, Hayom Shnei v'arba'im Yom Shehem Shisha Shavuot La Omer. And at this time, we will continue with the words of Aleinu, the Adoration, which you can find on page 282. Please rise as Tali and I open the Aron Kodesh, open the Ark.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
the words to Mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Tome, on page 294 in the prayer book, or right on the screens before you. We think of families in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days mourning their loved one. So we remember Richard Rich, friend of Denise Freifeld, Barbara Martini, mother of Kathy Nadelson, Arlene Sanders, aunt of Steve Lipinski, and May Lipinski, mother of Steve Lipinski. We also mark the yahrzeit anniversary of passing of loved ones on this Shabbat. We remember the following individuals: Sarah Anton, Jacob Bahar, Helen Binstein, Dorothy Boxon, Joyce Dillon, Elaine Dunn, Rosalind Dunn, Ida Furtick, Sally Foote, Sandra Cower, Abraham Marshak, Yetta Miller, Rena Odzer, Florence Packler, Audrey Pyenson, Lori Riddell, Stanley Tamber, Stephen Taylor, Beverly Thal, and Abraham Weissman. Are there any other names to add for yahrzeit at this time? Okay, we say Zichronam Livracha. May the memories of all of these people continue to be a source of blessing in our lives as we rise together to offer these words of Kaddish praise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divrach hirutevi amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kariv imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ulamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudusha brihu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who causes peace in the heavens cause peace to descend on us, Israel, and throughout the world, as we say, amen.
V'imiru, 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 amen. V'imiru,
free to be seated. It's my pleasure once again to call upon Talia, and she'll be leading us in the Shabbat Kiddush, which is found on the screens and also on page 5 in our prayer book.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kosho b'ahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit Ki hu yom tehila lemikra kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki vanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodecha v'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh haShabbat.
Say l'chaim, to life. Does it meet your specs? pretty good. Great juice, so it's tasty. Thank you so much. Once again, let's say Yashar Koach to Talia, beautiful leading of the Shabbat Kiddush prayer, and we'll move right along to our Motzi, prayer over the food from the earth. Motzi lechem min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Say B'tei Avon, enjoy. Time for some Shabbat announcements. Many thanks to Allison and to Joy for sharing your beautiful music and playing with us. Thank you so much. Along with our tech crew in the back, which this Shabbat evening is Steve Koenigsberg and Saul Tave. Toda Rabbah. The last session of my adult ed series called Navigating the Journey of the Life Cycle will be held in person and online in the Temple Library Tuesday, May 31st at noon. Our next Shabbat Live full band service will take place on another Bar Mitzvah weekend, Friday, June 17th. So hopefully you'll join us for that. Our annual congregational meeting will take place on Friday, June 24th. We'll begin at 5:45, little time to say hello and schmooze. The meeting itself will take place at 6 p.m., either in person or via live stream on Zoom. And it includes a free dinner before our services for Shabbat begin at 7:30. Following the service, we invite you to join us for a Oneg Shabbat right next door in the social hall, and this being the beginning of Memorial Day weekend, the official start to summer. We would like to close with the words of God Bless America. I'll ask all of us to rise for that. In a sanctuary, the American flag is always stage right, which is on your left, the beautiful words of Irving Berlin.
While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America.
Feel free to be seated. We, of course, owe our freedom to those who have fought and lost their lives, preserving the freedom and democracy that America enjoys. So our heart goes out to them and to all of their families. We are going to conclude, as we've been doing, with a prayer for our health and well-being that you'll find right on the screen. Feel free to join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al shmirat hanefesh, which is the mitzvah and sacred obligation to protect our lives and health, the lives and health of those around us. Shabbat shalom, one and all. Thank you so much for being here. For those of us who are here, join us in the Oneg Shabbat in the social hall.